Thank you so much for joining us for this. It's probably your 10th webinar of the day anyway, so so I appreciate you jumping on this one with us. So yeah, we're going to be looking today a bit around sort of how your brand can be positioned for the now, but also for what's to come. So obviously the situation that has been emerging over the past few weeks has caused a lot of us to rethink, what we're doing with our brands, what they're all about, and also, how can we make them most effective now. So today I'll introduce who I am, so you don't have to keep questioning who this person is. We'll look at what the now is, what the situation currently is, and what the risks, the needs, and the opportunities are there. We're going to look at how brands respond in a time like this. I've got a great case study for you, which I've not seen sort of anyone else talking about at the moment. So it's a good one. It's a good one for us to look at. And a brand that's really kind of proved their stripes over the years. And then we're going to look at some practical steps. I really wanted to make today very practical for you guys. Now, we can talk about theory, all day long, and we all love to talk about, listen to webinars about, how brand is, such an effective tool, how, what it means, what's the theory of it. But I want to get down to some practicals today as well. I really want you guys to walk away from today's session knowing what the next thing you can do is. And then we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. So please do jump in. Hui's going to be monitoring the Q&A channel. There's a little button that you can click there where you can just put in some questions. So please do, if anything pops up into your mind whilst I'm talking, just pop it in there and we can go through it together at the end. Like I say, I really want this to be practical. I don't want to just give you like the big, here's a great idea, aren't we clever stuff. I really want to get down to practicals. I want there to be something valuable out of this for you guys today that you can walk away with. Okay, so let's get into it. So my name's Philip. I'm the creative director at Wonderful. I've got a fair bit of experience working with brands on a kind of global scale, but also kind of down to that kind of medium size as well. So I've helped start and launch new brands, create them from scratch, from naming right through to roll out, but also helped to define some of the global brands here as well. So, last year we worked with RS Components, one of the world's biggest industrial companies, on repositioning their own label brand. I've worked with HSBC on rebranding part of that business too. So, got a good amount of scale in there. I've also had experience starting new businesses, from running and starting a fashion label, which did pretty well over multiple seasons, as well as starting creative agencies, and obviously being part of the leadership with Dan Mordup at Wonderful. So my kind of specialities, if you want to define them, are around innovation and the strategy that's required to bring change, and to bring change for purpose. So whether that's change for a team, or whether that's change in terms of organizational transformation and that brand transformation, that's where my experience and that's where my passions are. So it's a little bit about me. So Wonderful, we are, we find ourselves actually in a position where we've been for a number of years working with brands to help them to transition to a digital world anyway. So, hello, the new normal is very much that. And not only that, we're an agency that think through from brand and that kind of the big ideas, the big thinking, the strategies that are going to sort of transform your business, through to the implementation through your digital strategies. How do we engage digital audiences? Those kind of questions. So, what we're trying to do at the moment is really put out as much content as we can to help that conversation, because we know there's a lot of brands that suddenly find themselves in difficult positions. And we've been working with, and we have the experience to sort of help on those first steps to kind of getting repositioned for a new normal. So Scale or Fail series that we're running, this is part of, we've been running for, again, some time now. So this is really about being part of the conversation around how you shift from just starting something or creating something from scratch to scaling up into something that you can ultimately either exit via a sale or whatever that looks like for you. So we've interviewed and we've produced events and webinars and content with some of the biggest scale-up companies around, some of the guys that have really, been walking the walk on this. So we want to help that conversation, again, help businesses and brands get there. So some of the partners we work with on this. So, right, so the why now question is the first one I wanted to really get into. So the first thing I want to say, and I think, the reason we're trying to put out as much content as we can at the moment is the reality right now for brands is that there will be winners and there will be losers. We all want us all to just come through this unscathed, but the reality is already we're seeing businesses closing their doors. We're seeing brands that we've known for a long time shutting up shop. I mean, I literally think it was the first day that we went into lockdown, Laura actually closed their doors. So a brand there that's been on our high street for years and years and years, straight out of the box, having to close their doors. So we're not in a time of middle grounds. We're in a time of extremes. So we're going to have those that are kind of really struggling and those that can capitalize. So some of the data we've been sharing in our other webinars has been evidencing that. So the source we're using here is Tony Hillier's Successful Competitive Strategies for Recession Recovery. And the data he has suggests that if you invest at times like this, in these black swan sort of unusual crisis events, if you invest at these times so that you can gain share of voice during these times, those brands that do that are able to capture up to 3 times more market share through the downturn than those that don't invest at this time. So regardless of what side of the fence you're on in terms of investment or kind of more of a protectionist defensive position, there's no denying that the opportunity for you and your competitors is that there can be these big gains in terms of your market share. Now, on the flip side of that, and when we look at those that are going to maybe start losing out at times like this, those companies that are cutting investment by 50% for 1 year before returning to their normal spending can take up to 2 years to recover their lost share. So you've got two sides to this. So you've got, not only can I lose ground by not investing, but you've also got the other side of it, which is your competitors can gain ground. So it's not a time for us to be, to be sitting on the fence. It's not a time for us to be kind of questioning and, to be indecisive. Now is a time for us to really make those tough decisions. So I had titled this 2020 vision because I don't know if anyone remembers a couple of months ago in January when we were all having a joke about this idea of 2020 vision this year and looking, at the opportunity and the things that the year held for us. Never in a million years would we have dreamed that 3 months into the year, we'd be in the situation we're in now. So I think 2020 vision for me is switched from that idea of opportunity and sort of that kind of looking forward to what can come to. 2020 vision is about being real about ourselves. The 2020 vision, I think, is actually about a situation of circumstances, making brands sit up and say, we cannot hide behind, our kind of demand for our product or our existing customer base. We've got to stand up and ask the difficult questions, make the difficult calls, and make the steps forward that are necessary. So part of that is about timescales. So again, sort of there's evidence to suggest that we looked at in our last webinar that the process of digital transformation that was being projected for the economy over 5 years. We're now looking at that happening over 5 months because of the situation, and obviously everyone moving to almost a digital first world. So not only is it about having tough decisions to make, it's about having to make them within the time frame. The time has sped up. It's a critical moment. We've got to move. So some other sort of stats around to sort of support that need for decisiveness. So the figures that were coming out yesterday over the last couple of days are that we're looking at a 35% decline in the economy in the UK over the next quarter. So, no sector, no business is going to be completely insulated from the impact of that. On the flip side, another story I've seen over the last couple of days is that the Hermes stores in China have started reopening, and one of the stores in the Guangzhou province took $2.7 million in one day on the first day it reopened. So one of the features of a pandemic downturn is that they tend to be V-shaped. So although we've got this steep decline, 30%, 35% decline in the economy over the next quarter, we also have this opportunity for a steep incline as well. So, like I say, we're looking at 2.7 million in one day for that one store. So that's the landscape we're looking at over the next few months. So time is critical because we've got steep decline, steep incline, but also that the steepness and the depth of that actually means that businesses cannot be insulated and just can't ignore or try and just ride out this kind of situation without any response. So obviously today we're looking at how we respond as brands. So I think one of the things that brands are finding out, and I want to say that brands, when we're talking about brands here, what we're talking about is not Nike, Coca-Cola, Apple, just those guys. Obviously we know that they have valuable brands that we can all recognize. But a brand really is just the recognition and the understanding that a customer or an external party has about your service or product or the experience they're getting from it. So yes, we can do things to influence that, but our brand is actually owned by our customers. They decide what their perception is of what you do. So when we're talking about brands here, what we're talking about really is your business, your product, your service, the whole wrap, everything that wraps that thing up is what we're talking about here. So don't think we're just talking about those big kind of consumer brands. So one of the things I think that has become pretty real is the understanding that we're living in a time of truths. So brands are finding themselves in a position where no longer is a customer's just coming to them for a transactional relationship. They just want a product and then they're gone. So many of our businesses and brands aren't actually able to operate or to transact at the moment anyway. So, the question they're asking is, what are we about then if our customers can't buy our product from us? So there's brutal truths happening at the moment for brands. And some of those brutal truths are resulting in closures, which is why this is such a serious matter. But some of these brutal truths are causing brands to say, well, what is it? What value are we bringing to the world? So, I think that's one of the first questions we should be asking ourselves. It's time to be serious. There's no hiding from reality. What are we all about? Brands, if you want to know what brands are about, now is the perfect time. If you look around you at the brand landscape right now, you'll see what brands are all about. No matter what they've been feeding you over the last few years or months or whatever about their brand values, or their being a brand of purpose, or being a brand that wants to change the world, look around you now and you'll see what they're all about. And that is the question that is being asked of brands right now. So understanding what you're, and having a clarity at your core, what are our values and how are we expressing them is critical for this time. Because how do you know what to do if you don't know what you're all about? Brands are showing their true colours. We're seeing brands that are standing up and being counted, brands that are actually standing on their values, and we'll look at a couple in a minute, but brands that are actually sort of doing something based on how they add value to the world, not just the products that they sell. We're seeing also brands that are just protecting themselves and hiding, and brands that are almost doing the opposite by creating a ring fence around themselves in an attempt to insulate themselves from the current situation. The other thing I want to say here is there's no protection for brands that just think they're doing a good job. They've done a good job. No brand right now or business deserves to be in business just because they've been in business. If your market has shrunk, if the harsh reality of the current time we're living in has bitten, then there's no hiding. And just in the same way we've been saying about the virus, it doesn't matter whether you're rich, poor, or whatever. This is the same for the situation with your business. So there's no hiding behind, we've done a good job, so therefore we should be okay. Responding now is the only play you've got here. So a couple of sort of examples of brands that are standing up. So disruption is perfect for disruptors. So those brands that really know what they're all about and are prepared to live by it, this is the perfect time for them. So for these kind of brands, and obviously there's some bigger brands sort of represented here, but for the smaller brands that have been standing on their values and doing something valuable as well, now should be a time that you can actually celebrate who you are, and you should be filling your boots in terms of the opportunity. You've got the opportunity to demonstrate why you were different with action, not just in the theoretical. No longer can people just say we're something. You've got to stand up and be something. You can capture customers at this time, so you're ready for that upturn in demand. Saying about that V-shaped curve. So brands that are standing for something can really capture that share of voice and that share of market right now. Brands that are really well positioned for times like this are the flexible and agile brands. So this is where the smaller and medium-sized brands can really, really disrupt sectors, because the bigger guys find it harder to turn and to steer, whereas you've got the opportunity to adapt your proposition, adapt your positioning for the new now, and to sort of disrupt and to take market share from those that are finding it more difficult to respond. And I guess finally, in this season, be braver than your competition. And I'll come back to this a couple of times through this. Now is the time to be braver than everyone else. That's how you're going to be on that winning side. That's how you're going to be gaining market share. Be braver than your competition. And like I say, there's a couple of examples. Brewdog, very quickly came out and started producing the hand sanitizer and giving that away to the NHS. Now, they've done it in their own way. They've done it in their own tone of voice. And, it's not just any old hand sanitizer. It's a postmodern classic. So not only are they doing something that means something right now and is valuable, they're doing it in a way that owns a tone of voice and owns a kind of a space in this conversation. So Zara are producing some of the uniforms and some of the scrubs for the healthcare. So again, they're standing up and being counted at this time, which their customers will remember on the bounce back. And then Dyson, again, Dyson are all about innovation, all about engineering. What perfect opportunity for them to demonstrate that by actually creating the ventilators. So they're standing up for what they're all about, and they're doing something valuable. Okay, so I said at the start about us having a case study that I've not seen sort of spoken about anywhere else right now. There's been a lot of comparisons with this time being like other crisis events. And one of the ones that, is an obvious one to go to when you're talking about major global disruption is World War II. And that is sort of an event which impacted fully globally, completely destroyed some sectors and industries, and required that re-emergence into a new normal. So the brand I want to look at today as a case study is Braun. So I was watching, and if you get a chance to jump on, it's free to watch at the moment. There's a documentary. There's a documentary about Braun and about how they transitioned their brand philosophy and their design philosophy, and obviously Dieter Rams being the central point of that and being the leading sort of mind behind that. And you can see him there in the picture. It's a great documentary. So jump on Vimeo, I think, and watch that. But one of the things that struck me was Braun found themselves in a position where their business was destroyed by the war. The demand for civilian products went. They found themselves where their infrastructure was being destroyed. It was a proper crisis. I mean, we're facing a very difficult crisis now, but obviously with some of the things those guys were facing, just staying at home seems doesn't seem quite so bad. But they were facing a similar situation in terms of industry, where they were having to rethink what the new emerging economy was going to be like. So they went for a period of disruption where the war just stopped all sorts of industries, stopped the normal, stopped business as usual. They went through that crisis period where they were having to sort of retool for other situations. You could argue we're in a similar position now where, like say, Brewdog, whoever, are retooling to provide for that crisis period. But then they had to emerge in the new normal. Now, obviously in their context, Germany was kind of on its knees economically, and it was almost like a from scratch situation. So their motivation, their purpose, Braun, was to rebuild the new Germany. And brands are always looking for purpose, a reason for being beyond just their products. Now we're faced with a time where we've got to rebuild the new normal when we come out of this situation. It's going to, who knows what that's going to look like specifically, but we are going to have to rebuild for a new normal. So the sons of the founder, Arthur and Erwin Braun, rebuilt Braun for a new world. And I think there's a lot we can learn from Braun with how they approach that. So firstly, Braun didn't try to do something that was just about rebuilding Germany. What they stuck to was what they knew, what they were good at. So Braun were a consumer tech brand. Their purpose was to produce these products. Now, obviously, in doing that, they were rebuilding the economy in Germany and rebuilding, in the new situation. But they didn't define themselves by the situation. They defined themselves by what they were good at. And I think the temptation when we go through these disruptive times and these times where, things have to change, we start to question everything, and we start to sort of, throw everything out the window and try and find a totally new way. But sticking to what you know and what you're good at is one of the keys to moving forward. So secondly, they had a simple brand philosophy. So the Braun brothers had the philosophy of just make things better. In some respects, not more complicated than that, but just make things better. Now, for them, that meant being modern, being part of the new world. So for them, better meant, the design of it, the function of it. But again, it was aligned to what they did and what they were about. Making things better was their purpose. So thirdly, they repositioned for the new normal. So better for them became about new materials, new designs, and the new customer needs. So they emerged refocusing their product ranges on the new consumer paradigm. Now, before, product designs were all built around traditional and kind of historic forms, and coming out of that period, the new normal, consumers were looking for something progressive, were looking for a new paradigm. They were looking for new things and had new demands on the products. And Braun repositioned themselves for that new normal. So the questions, I guess, and the challenges are, how can your brand be the best solution in the new world? What do you do really well right now that can be a solution in the new world? Secondly, what philosophy and purpose do you have to build on? So, I really like the idea, and sort of we've been looking with sort of some of our own clients, the idea of philosophies in brands, I think, are really powerful. So, you've not got to wrap it up in a statement necessarily that just answers all the questions, but a philosophy just leads you in a direction. So what are your philosophies? Is it just being, simpler, more beautiful, whatever it is? What is the philosophy and purpose that you can build on? And I guess thirdly, how can you be brave? Braun were hiring architects, hiring guys from the design schools. Their bravery came in investing on what was emerging in this new world. So getting into some practicals then. So what can we do right now? So let's stop guessing. I think that, again, one of the temptations in times like this for brands is to continually try and second guess what's coming. And that guessing can actually be an obstacle to moving forward. We spend so long guessing that we're almost just waiting for our guessing to be confirmed, rather than acting on what we believe is the next step forward. So please stop trying to guess what's coming. We know it's going to be more digital. We know there are some sectors which are going to be transformed by this. And yes, there are things we can learn from that. So those broad trends, absolutely absorb those, stay on top of those. But you're not going to get your specific answers for your brand or business out of just that insight. That is not going to be the solution. That is just going to give you some framing, just a direction for where you're going. Specific answers for your brand and business are going to come out of knowing your customers and knowing your brand. We'll look at that in a second. And finally, you've got to do it one step at a time. Taking one step forward right now is going to be more valuable to you than trying to guess in a month's time the perfect next step. Moving forward, being engaged, creating momentum is so important right now. I'm going to give you 3 things that you can focus on. So first of all, step 1, I think, is your brand proposition. And I've sort of put in brackets there philosophy, because, if it makes it easier for you to understand, think about it as a philosophy. So when we work with brands in their proposition, what we look at is, in its essence, the them and us. So understanding the them has got to be where it starts. So you start with your customers. Now, practically right now, phone your customers, speak to your customers, question your customers, ask them how they're doing, ask them what their challenges are, know where they are right now. That's got to be where you start. You've got to know your customer inside out. You've got to know what things they don't need from you anymore. You've got to know what problems they've got. You've got to know what they don't like about your service. You've got to know why they chose your service. Those kind of things are where you're going to start teasing out really specific answers from this situation. Got to understand their pains. You've got to know about them. So again, practically phone them, run surveys, email them, just stay in touch with them. Just absolutely just know them, know exactly where they are now. So the second part, once we've got that kind of clarity, is about us. What are we all about? What do we do really well? What is unique about us? What values do we have? Now, if you've got no values in place, or you're certainly not walking out your values, Now is definitely the time to start looking at that, but you're a bit behind the curve because you need to be walking in those values now. You need to be acting on those values. Those values need to be driving your conversations, and your actions as you're making steps forward. So you've got a bit of catching up to do, and it might be you're kind of running that process at the same time as moving forward. Don't let that stall you, is what I'm saying. Don't let we haven't got any brand strategy stall you, but get that ball spinning, get that wheel spinning, get that in motion. Developing a philosophy that you can work to, developing a set of values that you're built on makes it very, very much easier to then be part of the conversation and to actually start delivering action. Those brands we were talking about before, the Brewdogs and Dysons and Braun, they had values, they had a philosophy which they acted on. That is how they knew how to move forward in the new normal. Not just because the world had changed and they're reshaping for the new world, but because they had something of value about them. They had some substance to them that they could act upon. Do not let the new now define what your business is all about. Your business and your brand has got to be about something that you're excellent at, or that you're a solution for, that also has a part in the new world. Right, second step. I'm just sort of conscious of time here. So a second step is find opportunities to be you. So to be you, I mean your brand. Obviously, defining and knowing what your values are is part of how you answer that question. But people are looking for people right now, and people are looking for brands to act in a human way. So be real, as in be about action rather than just words, but be humans. Don't hide behind it. I mean, obviously, I'm presenting this webinar from my home. There's no hiding behind a brand here. It's me presenting this as part of Wonderful. So brands need to be acting like that. It's human to human. Don't hide that. But obviously, it's got to be framed in the context of what your brand values are and what you're all about. So make sure you're doing the things you do really well. One of the things I've been saying to our team quite a lot is just do the simple things really well. Do the things we're committed to do excellently. That is the best answer, solution, the best gift you can give your customers right now. Be excellent at what you've already committed to do, better than ever. That is one of the ways you're going to be the answer to the new normal. So another practical thing you could do is be creative with theoretical scenarios. So one of the things we do when we're looking at brand strategies, we try to abstract them so it's easier to see how your brand values and personality work out. So one of the exercises is, if your brand created a car, what sort of car would that be? What are the personality traits and values that you have that would influence what that car would be like? In this new situation, if your brand or business was tasked with creating a hospital, what would that hospital look like? It helps us understand the personality and the values that are in our business and brand by abstracting into those kind of scenarios. And also there might be some interesting little ideas that come out of that as well. And thirdly and finally, plan over 3 time horizons. So when you're looking at your plan, look at the short term, medium term and long term. So the short term is responding right now in this crisis. How do I be an answer right now? The medium term is how do I put myself in a position to capitalize on the uptick of that V-shaped curve. And the long term is when we're back to a new normal, who knows when that will be, but when we're at our new normal, how am I a relevant part of that landscape? How do I capitalize on being in the right position for that landscape? So short term, that means innovate. Be braver than your competitors, i.e. be prepared to do things that maybe cost you in the short term, but will gain you in the long term. Things that maybe don't directly relate to a sale, but directly relate to you expressing your brand and adding value to your customers. Being brave in product innovation. Start to aim higher. So clarify your core of your brand, establish your philosophy, start aiming beyond just delivering product or service and being about something, being about having a philosophy about what you do. So start aiming high, but don't let that stall action. Don't let this process stall your action. Then the medium term, the things you'll be looking to do are to start to align your customer needs with your brand values, USPs, and what you're all about, your philosophy and your product. So the service or the solution that I'm delivering. So those three things, when we come to this uptick, you're a brand that means something to your customers in their needs, in their lives, where they want it, and it's giving them the right solution. And part of that is leading the conversation in your space as well. So again, this is where you can start real quick, but being positioned for that uptick. Start leading the conversation, start putting out content, start putting out meaningful thought about a current situation or the sector you're in. And I know a lot of people are already doing that, but that has got to be one of the actions that happens kind of in the now. And then the long term, you're looking to go from I've got lead there again, but actually should be own the conversation in your space. So you've been creating some noise around it, you've been part of the conversation, but in the new normal, what you want to be is in a position where you can actually be the expert in that space. And then continual brand evolution is got to be the new normal. Being static leads to brands sort of slowly becoming irrelevant. So you've got to stay. This process that we're shortcutting now over the next few months is almost a continual process that will be going through the new normal in our new digital world. Right, I know I've sort of dashed through this a bit, and I know, I've overrun probably as well. I wanted to get those key points across to you. We've got some time now for Q&As, but I know obviously we're short of time, so I don't want to keep you for too long. So what we'll do is, obviously this recording will be coming out to you anyway. You can message me and contact me with any questions you've got. So my email is philip.hansen@bewonderful.co.uk. Please do ask any specifics that are relevant to your business or brand. Please do ask me what brave means. Ask me what, how do you get to the core of what your values or your personality are. It's really hard, that stuff, to be objective about because you're too wrapped up in it. Please do sort of send over those questions, those specific. I'm more than happy to just sort of offer any kind of support that I can right now. I've just seen actually one question which I'll answer quickly that's come through. Can charity offers be considered gimmicky or part of your brand values? Well, I think in some respects you're partly answering your own question there. Thanks, Ben, for that question. I think in the right now, so the short term, being part of the answer and being open-handed, I think is what every brand should be doing. I don't care what your brand's about or your business is about. We're not in business. We don't have brands just to serve ourselves. We have these entities so that we can serve the world around us. So I think right now, any way that you can be, a servant to the world in that way, great, go for it. It can be gimmicky, I think, when you start to then leverage that as part of your messaging or a way of delivering your marketing. I mean, obviously there's a tone of voice thing there as well. But I think if you can find ways of giving and being open-handed that align to what you do and what you're about, then that's where you really start. Your brand starts to really kind of resonate then with that sort of that altruistic act. So, like I say, Brewdog didn't just create hand sanitizer. It was in their tone, and it was like this punky, cool kind of hand sanitizer. So, I think you've got to be true to yourselves, and so don't be afraid to do that, but also look for the opportunities for that to be in the philosophy and in aligned with what your brand is all about. That's an excellent example of a very specific question. So please do ping over those questions. More than happy to sort of give you any insight from our own experience with some of our other customers and sort of seeing how that's playing out. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, guys. Like I say, super grateful that you jumped on this today. I know sort of how many webinars there are around at the moment. So thanks again for jumping on this. I'm going to wrap this up now. Any questions that do come in, I will respond to you directly, yeah, give you a response afterwards. Thank you so much, and speak to you soon. Thanks.